In today's video, I'm going to be showing you guys how to use Firebase's Cloud Firestore database within your Flutter application. We're going to take a look at all of the essentials such as creating, reading, updating, and deleting data from Cloud Firestore. And I'm going to show you all of this while making sure that you write well-structured, maintainable, type-safe code. To get started, I'd just like to mention that links to all of the resources that I use within this video, as well as a link to the source code, can be found in the description below. So feel free to take a look at it if you're confused at any point. Our application is going to have the following functionality. We'll have a to-do application whereby we'll be able to see a list of to-dos. We'll be able to mark to-dos as done. And at the time at which we mark them or unmark them as done or undone, we'll see the time updated for the actual timestamp. And if you click on the plus button here, then we'll be able to add a to-do. So here I'll add a to-do for, let's just say, subscribe, and then press OK. And as you can see, that subscribe has been added to our database. This all is obviously going to be persisted on Cloud Firestore. Besides this, I want to let you know that I initialized an empty Flutter project, and I then run Flutterfire configure to actually set up the Flutter project to communicate with Firebase. And then that's pretty much it in terms of the actual setup for this tutorial. If you guys are confused as to how to actually set up and connect Flutter and Firebase together, I already have a tutorial for this on my channel, so you can take a look at that to understand that in more detail. But once you have Flutter connected to Firebase and all of that is set up, the first thing that we're going to be doing is taking a look at the dependencies that we'll be using. So if you already have the Flutter application connected with Firebase, then you're going to already be using the Firebase core dependency. Besides this, another dependency that we're going to be using is Cloud Firestore. And then besides that, I'm also going to be using the Intel package, which will allow me to take datetime objects and convert them into parse strings of a specific format that I want. With this done, the first thing I'll recommend is that you give your application a test run and make sure that it's working. And then from there, come to the actual Firebase project. And then from there, click on build and Firestore database. Initialize the Cloud Firestore database if you haven't already, and make sure that the rules for this database are set to test mode and not production. Once that is done, we are going to be presented with this type of a UI. And this is the UI for Cloud Firestore. Cloud Firestore is basically a NoSQL database. So this basically means that it doesn't have any intrinsic structure to the data that we put within it, no tables in this case, and we can put any type of data that we want within this as long as it conforms to a JSON format. So at the root of our database, we have collections, and collections can have documents within it, and documents can have further collections within them. In today's tutorial, since we are creating an actual to-do application, as you can see here, what we're going to be doing is creating a collection of to-dos. So I'm going to give my collection an ID. In this case, it's going to be to-dos. And then I'm going to do next. For the document ID, we can do auto ID. And then we're going to have some fields that are going to depict the data that each to-do is going to have. The first is going to be the actual task. So what the to-do is, it's going to be a string. So here I will say go to the gym. And then after this, we'll have some more fields such as is the to-do done? So is done. This is going to be a Boolean, and the value to start with will be false. We'll also have a created on field, and this is going to be a timestamp. And for the date, I'll select today. The time, just mark it as of now. And then another one, which is going to be updated on. And then I am going to create timestamp. Date is going to be today. Time, again, the same. And with this, do save, and there we go. Now we have a collection which has a document within it, and a collection can have many documents, so many to-dos, and each to-do is going to have the following structure: created on, is done, task, and updated on. Now I can add more fields to this. I can add another collection to this. I can create a new document, or I can make more collections, but this is the basic structure of what our database is going to look like for the actual task app that we are creating. So once this is done, we can actually move back to Flutter, and here we are going to be doing some things now. So firstly, I'll start debugging my application. So now that our application is actually running on the device, the first thing that I want to let you guys know that I've modified the main function a bit for our Flutter application. I've marked it async, and then I've made a call to Flutter widget bindings is shown initialized. After that, I've initialized my Firebase application. And now what I'm going to be doing is that I'm going to be calling the Firebase Firestore plugin. And then from there, I'm going to be accessing the instance, and then I'm going to be modifying some settings for the instance. The setting that I'm actually going to be modifying, I'll just copy and paste that in. It's a settings object where we are setting persistence unable to true. And what this is basically going to do is enable us to cache the data on device. So whenever we make subsequent requests to get data from Cloud Firestore, and for some reason that data is the same as the data that was on the actual database, then we are just basically going to get the data from the cache instead of hitting the database, and this is going to make our application more cost efficient. Once this is done, you can do command save, reload your application, make sure that everything is working, and now we're ready to get going. As I had alluded to before, since I want to make this tutorial conform to creating code that is well structured as well as maintainable and type safe, the first thing that we're going to be doing is creating a to-do model class within our code base, which is going to model the structure of a to-do within our database. So to do that, I will come to lib, create a new folder here. I'm going to call this models. And within this, we're going to create a file, which I'm going to call to-do. And then I'm going to say dot. Then from here, what I'll do is that I'm going to create a class within this called to-do. And this is going to be the class represent the structure of a to-do in our application. So this class is going to have a couple of different responsibilities, but all are going to pertain to the same structure of a to-do. The first is that it's going to basically define the structure of what a to-do is. Then we'll also add functionality to this class so that we can take some JSON, we can pass it to this class's constructor, and then it returns a to-do instance to us. And we'll also add some functionality to this class so that it can take a to-do instance and it can return to us JSON for that to-do, so that we can actually save that JSON within Cloud Firestore, because Cloud Firestore stores JSON objects within it. The first thing that I'll do is that I'll define the properties that a to-do is going to have. So these are the same that we saved within our Cloud Firestore. So task is done, created on and updated on, as you can see, string, bool, and then this timestamp object definition can be copied in from Cloud Firestore. Once this is done, then I'm going to define the actual constructor for this class, which is going to take in required named arguments for task is then created on and updated on. Once this is done, I'm going to create a factory method, which you do by doing to-do.from and then whatever the name is after the dot, so from JSON. So as the name suggests, this is going to take a JSON object, it'll return a to-do to us. And then what I'm going to say basically within the actual parameters that this function is going to get passed is that it's going to get a map of a JSON. And then we'll return this. And what we're basically going to do here is that I'm going to say that we're going to set the task, and we're going to set the task to the JSON object that we get. We ask as the task property from it. And then what I'm going to do is mark that or cast that as a string like so. And once this is done, I'm going to follow the same structure for the other three properties, which are is done, created on, and updated on. And I'm casting them as a bool, timestamp, and timestamp like so, and then do command save. So now that we have the factory method created as well, another method that I'll create is going to be a function which will take the to-do that we have and will return a copy of the to-do to us, except it's going to allow us to modify some properties that we want to modify within the to-do. So we're going to take the same to-do, we can modify some properties within the same to-do instance, and then it'll return a new instance of the to-do to us. So this function is going to return a to-do to us, is going to be called copy with, and this function is going to take in some optional named arguments. The first argument is going to be an optional string, which is going to be task. And then I'm going to add the other three as well, which is done, created on, and updated on. And then what I'm going to do within this function is that I'll return an instance of a to-do. And this is what we're going to do. If we get a task passed to us, then that is the task that we're going to use for this new to-do instance that we're giving. Otherwise, we'll just use the current instance's task. And then this is going to be the same for all of the other ones. So I'll just copy and paste them in. So if we pass in an is done, then it uses that. Otherwise, it uses the current instances then property like so, and do command save. And finally, I'll create the last actual function on this class, which is going to return a JSON object to us. So it's going to return a map, which is going to have keys as string and then the actual values as an optional object. And I'm going to call this function to JSON. It will not get any parameters passed to it. And within this, we will return the following map. So we'll return a map with the property task set to task, is done to is done, created on to created on, and updated on to updated on. So now by creating this class, we have defined the structure of what our to-do is going to look like, as well as some utility methods to convert our to-do to JSON or take a JSON and convert that to a to-do. The next thing that I want to do is that I do not want to clutter my home page, which is just a empty stateful widget class with all of the logic of actually setting up Cloud Firestore and setting up the actual collection references and things like that. I want to have a separation of concern. So to do that, what I'll do is that I'll create a new folder within lib. I'm going to call this services. And then here I'm going to create a new file, which I'm going to call database_service. Then what I'm going to do is that I'm going to open this class up, and here I'm going to create a class called database service. Now, before we define anything within database service class, what I'll do is that I'll define a constant string, and I'm going to name this to-do collection reference like so, and I'm going to set this equal to to-dos. And this is going to be the same as the name of our collection within Cloud Firestore, which is to do. So if it was something else for you, you would do that here. And the reason we are defining this globally at the top of our actual file is so that it's easy for us to reference this collection, and it will help us avoid any typos. Because if we added another S here or another O here, then it would be referencing a totally different part of our database, a totally different collection. So now that we have our database service class created, what I'm going to be doing within this is firstly creating a variable which will store a reference to instance of Cloud Firestore, which we can do like this, and then I'm going to import the package. Once this is done, I'm also going to create a late final collection reference. And a collection reference, as the name suggests, it's a reference to a particular collection within our database. And this is going to store a reference to our to-dos. So I'm going to do to-dos ref like so. And once this is done, I'm going to now create the constructor for my database service. And this is going to be the part which is going to be a tad bit confusing, but I'll try to make it as simple for you guys as possible. So we'll take our to-dos ref and we'll set that equal to the firestore.collection. And here we need to pass it a path to our collection, which in this case is going to be the to-do collection ref. And then from here, what I'm going to do is that I am going to use the .withConverter function. What withConverter basically does is that it returns a collection reference to us, but this collection reference is going to have a schema associated with it. So what I want to do is that I want to make sure that all of the stuff that is going to be saved to this collection or extracted from this collection needs to conform to a specific type of structure. And that structure is going to be the to-do model that we've created. So here I'm going to add some angle brackets and then add to-do like so. And that's pretty much all we have to do. And then with converter, we have to give it some parameters, which are the function from Firestore and to Firestore. So what do they do? Well, when we get data from Firestore, from this collection, it's going to call the from Firestore function on each of the documents. And what we're basically going to do here is that we will basically get snapshots passed to us, as well as another argument that we will ignore. And then what we'll do is that we will take the snapshot and we will return a to-do instance. So to do that, what I'll do is do to-do from JSON. So now we're using that from JSON function. And here what I'm going to do is pass snapshots.data, and then I'm going to add an exclamation mark here. And then for to Firestore, I'm going to do the same thing. So to Firestore, as the name suggests, is going to be a function that is going to be called before our data gets sent over to Cloud Firestore to be saved within this particular collection. So here what we're going to be doing is that we are going to get a to-do passed to us, as well as another parameter that I will ignore by giving it an underscore. And then here what we'll do is that we'll take our to-do and we'll convert it to JSON. And then this JSON will be given to Firestore. So now we've created a reference to our collection, which is our to-do collection, and it's all type safe, which means when we get data from Cloud Firestore from this collection, we know that it's going to conform to the schema of the to-do that we've defined. And when we save data to Cloud Firestore, then it's going to be the same. It's going to conform to the schema of the to-do we've defined. So this is good. This is good developer experience. It makes easy and other developers to work on our application, and it's going to make our application a lot less error prone. So this is why we did things the way we did. So once this is done, now what I'm going to be doing is defining some functions on my database service, which are going to allow me to get data from Firestore. So the first one that I'm going to do is create a function which is going to allow me to get to-dos from the database. So to do that, what I'll do is that I'll create a function which is going to return a stream. This stream is going to be of type query snapshot. I'm going to call this get to-dos. And then I'll open this function. And within this, what I'll do is that I'll return our to-do refs dot snapshots like so. And this is pretty much all we have to do. Then I am also going to create another function which will allow me to add a to-do to Cloud Firestore. So to do that, what I'll do is that I'll create this function. I'll call it add to-do. And then I will say that we will get a to-do passed to us. I will mark this function as async. And within this, what I'll do is that I'll do to-dos ref dot add and then add the to-do. So let's just do this for now, and we'll add the rest of the methods later. And let's come to actually building the UI. So to get started with building the UI, what I'll do is that I'll come to my pages, home page, and here first thing I'm going to do is create a final variable within our homepage class, which will reference our database service and set it to an instance of our database service like so. With this done, just give a quick rerun to my application to make sure that everything is working and we get no errors. Within the build function, what I'll do is that I'll set the resize to avoid bottom inset property to false for the scaffold. And then I will basically define the app bar property to be a call to a function called app bar. And then I will basically copy and paste this function in, because this function is very simple. It just returns the app bar like so. So now we have an app bar that says to do. Once this is done, the next thing that I'll do is that I will create a function which will return a widget. I will call it build UI. And then for now, within this, I'm going to return a safe area widget, and the child for this is going to be a column, which is going to have a children's list, which for now will be empty. And then what I'll do is that I'll take this build UI, I'll come to my scaffold, set the body property to be build UI like so, and do command save. Within the safe area, what I'll do is that I will create a call to a function, which I will call underscore messages list view. So let me just copy and paste it in. And then I will come down and I will create this function call now, saying that this function will return a widget like so. Within this, what I'll do is that I will return a sized box, which is going to have the following properties for the height and the width. So the height is going to be 80% the height of the device, width will be 100%. And then for this size box, I will define a child, and the child is going to be a stream builder. So the stream builder is a thing which allows us to take in streams, ingest those streams, and then return a widget that's going to be built using the data from that stream. So the stream builder expects us to pass it a couple of arguments. The first is the builder. So what does it do once it gets the data? How does it build a widget from that? So that's what the builder function defines. If you have ever used a listview.builder function, this kind of works the same. So here, what we have to do is basically say that we get a context and a snapshot passed to us. And then within this, what I'll do is that for now, I will return a list view like so, and do Alt-Shift-F command save just to reformat our code. Our stream builder also expects us to pass it a stream. So this is the actual data stream. So where are we going to access this from? Since we want to get to-dos and display those to-dos, what we're going to do is do database service dot, and then I'm going to do the get to-dos, and that's pretty much it. That's all we had to do. So once this is done, the next thing that I'll do is that within the builder function, before we render any UI, what I'm going to be doing is actually creating a list of to-dos. And I'm going to say that we're going to do snapshot. And then from snapshot, I'm going to do .data, .docs. And if for some reason we don't have this, so I'll use the null-aware operator and I'll set that to be an empty list. So if snapshot.data doesn't exist, we just set to-dos to be an empty list. Then what I'm going to do is that I'm going to have a if block here, which says if to-dos are empty, we return a constant center text that says added to-do. And if that is not the case, then what I want to do is print to-dos. So do command save. And if I restart my application, we're going to see in the debug log, it gives me an output saying there's a list which has an instance of with converter query document snapshot to do. So there's some kind of a to do here with some kind of query document snapshot type of thing. So we'll come to that. So now that this is done, what I can do is actually use these snapshots to generate list view from them. So what I'm going to do now is that instead of using this list view, let's use a listview.builder. So to do that, I'll remove this and add listview.builder. the item builder is going to be similar to what we've defined before for a stream builder, but this time we're going to get the build context and an index passed to us. And then here what I'll do is that I am going to return a padding object with a child, which is going to be a list tile like so. And then what I'll do is that I will just add the remaining semicolons or commas where I have to add, just to make sure that the code is formatted nice. And then for my list view builder, I'm going to set the item count to be our to-dos.length and do command save. And then what I'm going to do is that within my list tile, before I actually show anything within this, what I'll do is that within my item builder function, I will create a to-do variable equal, and then I will set this equal to the to-dos at the current index. And then on this actual converter object, as you can see with converter queries document snapshot object, we have a function called data that we can call to access the data and then do command save. But before we do that, let's just import our to-do model. So if I do command save now and I print to-do, you are going to see that now if I restart my application, in the debug console, we're getting a print statement saying an instance of a to-do. So now we can do to-do dot created on is done task, and we can easily access all of this data. One other question you might have is that, okay, this is the data of the actual to-do. So this is all of the data that the document has. But how do I access the ID of the document? Great question. Well, to do that, what you can do is basically create another variable. So this is going to be a string because IDs are always string, called to-do ID, and I'm going to set this equal to to-dos, then add that specific index dot ID property like so, and do command save. So now I can do print to-do ID, restart my application, and we're going to see that we get the ID of the to-do printed here like so. So now that we have access to our to-do, we can do whatever we want with that data. So firstly, what I'll do is that I'll set the tile color for the list tile to be the following: theme.offContext color scheme.primary container. The title is going to be a text widget, and here I'm going to do to-do.task. So now we are seeing that. Then after this, I'm going to add a subtitle property, which will be text. This text is going to be basically the actual timestamp. So what I want to do is that I don't want to show the raw timestamp. I want to convert that into some kind of an actual format. So for that, I'll do date, and this is going to be imported from the Intel package. So let me quickly import that. And then here I'm going to define as a string the actual format of how I want my timestamp to be formatted. And then I will call the format function on this. And here I'll do to-do.updatedon.toDate. And then like so, and that's pretty much all we have to do. Just add the trailing commas, do command save, and now we're getting the timestamp shown as well. Once this is done, I'm going to add the trailing property to this, which is going to be a checkbox like so. And our checkbox expects us to give it a value. The value is going to be to-do.isDone. And then after this, what's going to happen when the to-do gets changed? So this is going to be a function where we'll get the value passed to us, and then we determine what happens when we click on this checkbox. So right now we click on this checkbox, nothing happens. So let's fix this. So to fix this, the first thing that we have to do is go to our database service and create a function which will allow us to update an existing to-do. To do that, I will create a function called update to-do, which returns void. And this function is going to take in two things. It's going to take in a string of the ID of the to-do as well as an actual to-do, like so. And then what I'm going to do here is that I'll do to-do ref dot document. So within this collection reference, I want to reference a particular document which has this ID, which is to-do ID, and then I want to update it, and I want to update, and I want to set that to to-do.json, like so. Now, similar to how we set up our collection reference, we can also set up a document reference with a with converter, but I just wanted to show you another way of how you could actually work without using any of this converter stuff with Cloud Firestore. So you could just use .update, but now that we do .update, then we just have to actually give it a map object. So we can get the map object by doing to-do.json. Command save, and that's pretty much all we have to do. So now within the onChanged, what I'm going to be doing is firstly changing the actual to-do and updating some of the properties for it. So what I'll do is that I'll create a new variable here called to-do, and I'm going to say this is going to be updated to-do. And I'm going to set this equal to to-do.copyWith. So what I want to do is that I want to update the isDone property. So I'll do isDone, and I'll set this equal to to-do.isDone. And whatever the opposite of that is, to do that, I'll add an exclamation mark. So if it's true, it'll be false. If it's false, it'll be true. And then also the updated on property, which I'll set to timestamp. And then we are going to do .now. And that's pretty much it. Once this is done, the next thing that I'll do is that I'll just simply call database service dot, and I'm going to do update to do. I'm going to pass it the to do ID and the updated to do command save. And now I'm going to go to Cloud Firestore, open it up on one side. And as you can see, we just have one to do and we're showing that. Go to the gym. So if I click done here, you're going to see that it gets marked done here, and in the database, the value gets changes as well. So now it's isDone to true, and updated on is like this. If I click on this again, it'll be marked as isDone false and updated on like so. So this is pretty powerful. Now you can see the actual magic of using these converters and setting up a model class and structuring your code base in a way so that there's a separation of concern and it's easy for you to maintain your code and grow your code base. So this is the actual power of using the structure that I showcased to you within this video. So now the next thing that we're going to be taking a look at is how can we delete a to-do. So to do that, what I'm going to be doing is on my list tile, I am going to be adding a on long press function callback. So when we long press on our tile, we want to do something. And then what I'm going to be doing here is that I am going to be coming to my database service. I'm going to say we'll create another function which will return a void. And this function is going to delete a to-do. So I'll call it delete to-do. It's going to take in a to-do ID. That's pretty much all we want. So the ID of the document that we want to delete, and we'll do to-dosref.doc and then the to-do ID dot delete. Do command save, come back, and on long press, I'll do database service dot delete to-do and give it the to-do ID to command save. So now if I open Cloud Firestore again and a long press on this, the to-do is deleted. And now since our to-dos list is empty, it says add a to-do. So let's now add an actual to-do programmatically. First thing that we have to do is define a floating action button. And this floating action button, I will just copy and paste it in like so. The floating action button requires what happens when it gets pressed. So I'll leave that empty for now. And then after that, what I'll do is that I'll paste in the actual properties for what the background and the child for this floating action button is going to be. Then what happens when it gets pressed? Well, I will say that when it gets pressed, a function called display text input dialog is called. And then I will go to the very bottom of my class. I'll say that this function will return a void. It's going to be called display text input dialog, and do this and do command save. So now that we have this button, we can click on it and then run some kind of a logic to actually add it to do. So what I'm going to be doing here is that I'm going to say that I'm going to return a call to a function called show dialog. And then what I'm going to be doing is also marking my function as a sync. Inside of the builder function, what I'm going to be doing is saying that we'll get a context passed to us, and then we need to define how our dialog is going to look. Here, what I'm going to do is that I'm going to return a alert dialog with a title, like so, and do command save and give a test run. So when we click on the plus, we get a dialog which says added to do. Once this is done, then what I'm going to do is that I'm going to set the content property for this to be a text field, like so. And then the decoration for this text field is going to be the following, like so, and do command save. So now if I click on it, we see a text field. Since I want to access the value that gets saved on this text field, what I'll do is create a text editing controller. So I'll come to the top of my class. I'll create a variable final text editing controller underscore text editing controller and set that to a new instance of text editing controller. And then I'll say that for text field, the controller is going to be underscore text editing controller, like so, and do command save. So now our controller is linked to our text field. Once this is done, after this, I'm going to define the actual actions list for my alert dialog. And for now, it'll be an empty actions list. And within this, I'll say that we'll have a material button, which is going to have color. Also define the on pressed property for this. So I'll define that. So what happens when this button gets pressed? For now, nothing. And if I click on the plus button now, you can see it looks something like this. So let me update the styling for the button and set the text color for this and the child for this to be the following. So now if I click on it, it says okay. So once this is done, the next thing that I'll do is that once we click on press, I want to basically dismiss the dialog, so that can be done by using navigator.pop context. And if there was anything within this text field, I want to clear it. So for that, I can do _ text editing controller.clear. And now that this is done, let's go to the actual logic of what happens when we add something here and how do we add that to Firestore. So in our database service, we had already created a function called add to do, which takes in a to do and adds that. So now what do we do? Well, within the actual material buttons on pressed property, what I'll do is that I'll create a new to do object, set it to do, and here I'm going to say we're going to create a new to do. The task is going to be the text editing controller dot and then the actual text. The isDone property is going to be false because we just created this to do. Created on is going to be timestamp dot now, and then updated on is going to be the same thing. And then with this done, the last thing that we'll do is do database service dot, and I'm going to do add to do, add the to do here, do command save, and that's pretty much it. That's all we had to do. So now that this is done, let's restart our application, open up Cloud Firestore one side, see the to-dos are empty for now, and add a to-do. So I'm going to add a to-do here saying like and subscribe. And if I do that and press OK, it's added here, and within our database, there you go, a new to-do was created with the following structure. I can create that as done, and it's going to mark that as done. And I can add more to-dos as well, such as go to the gym. So it adds another one, as you can see within our database. And I can also add another one, which is study Flutter. And press OK, and there you go. So that's pretty much it for today's tutorial. I hope that you enjoyed this tutorial and learned a bit more about how to work with Cloud Firestore and how to properly set up your code base so that it's easily maintainable and type safe. As always, if you had any questions, comments, or concerns, then feel free to leave them down in the comments below, and I'll try my best to answer them for you. And as always, stay happy, stay healthy, keep learning, keep growing, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye-bye.